Hello and welcome to How-To Diorama. I cannot believe I even got here. I mean, this has just been one of those crazy, crazy days. Hey, I got some folks that are here. I want to say hello. Hi, John. John Robeck's here. Hi, John. Boy, this is one we're going to have to talk about. It has just been a crazy week and just a crazy day. And then here's Eric. Hey, how you doing? Thanks very much for coming in, Eric. I've had just a bonkers morning. I got a new computer this week, and my older one, not the one we're using right now. This is really high end one, and I had an older one, and so I got a new one, and all that kind of stuff is good. And I didn't have one thing set so I could use it because that was a plan to use it out here at the bench, and because I have the office in here too. I'm just rambling, but that just all fell apart. And so I didn't get my short out this morning that kind of introduces the live stream. So it's just been a bonkers day, but it's one of those things where it was such a bonkers day, but I had just such a great week. I mean, I just had a really great week. I mean, I did all the lighting on this, and that's what we're going to talk about today, is doing the underground lighting. Hey, Martin is here. I want to say hi to Martin real quick. Hi, Bill. Just listening while painting a facade for SMC. Oh, very cool. Is it one of those facades that is from Vallejo? Those are kind of neat. But so back to what I was saying. I did a bunch of lighting this week, and I'm going to show you today how to build like a little lantern. I'm going to show you how I built a candle. And John, I think this is great because John Robeck, and he's on our call today. John Robeck first, thought about using these very tiny LEDs that he has, that he turned me onto, and then I got some. And he's like, I want to build a candle. And we talked about it and how he went about it, and I was able to do it, and I think he did it as well. So hopefully, John can tell us about his experience a little bit later on. He's not going to be on, but maybe just in comments. I am super scattered today. That's the other thing I'm going to say, because I typically have all this set up ahead of time, and it's a little bit, fun getting this all together, but typically I have it done well in advance. And I was literally surprised that it was time to start. So that tells you how frantic I am. So let's just dive into this. I want to show you what I did this week with the lighting and all that kind of stuff. So let's go over here. And no, that's not where I want to go. I want to go here. And that's not it either. Holy frights, what am I thinking? So is that where I'm not getting what I want to show you? So I'm just going to come back to me. I don't know. Why am I not seeing that? I got to do something here real quick and see if I can show you my computer screen, and it doesn't want to show. I don't know why. Well, anyway, what we're going to do is look at the kind of things that I did, and I'm going to do something a little bit bonkers. These things always work out when I do it, right? I'm going to turn off the lights so you can actually see the lighting in here, and then I'll go into like how to build them and what they are and all that kind of stuff, okay? So let's give that a shot first. I'm going to go ahead and turn off these lights, and I did this, and it doesn't look bad. So I don't think that it's going to be too bad of a deal here. So I hope you can hang with me. So that is what this looks like. I'm going to turn this monitor off too, since I can't get it anyway. And that's what the lights look like. And so this is something that I've talked about in like videos and live streams and shorts and things like that before. And that is, try when you're like at a model show or something like that, and you're trying to grab attention. One of the things that lighting does is it grabs people's attention. So I've been asked if I'm going to do like ground striations and things like that. And this is one of the reasons I'm going to do it, but in a very specific area. And that is this. As you're looking at this, by having the black here and having the light here, there's a very high contrast there. And that very high contrast is going to help grab people's eye. Now, of course, the lights are out here, but these show up quite nice in like a display hall or a room where you're showing your models and things like that. So I just wanted to show you what it looks like with all these lights in. I haven't even counted the number of lights I did, but there's a bunch. And I did a bunch of different lights too. There's some that are different tones. Some are different color, not colors, but by selecting the warmth or the heat of it, you can see different colors. This is called amber, and amber is a color because it's really, really low on the light spectrum, and so it gives you this really beautiful warm light, and I love it in here. I had some close-ups of it. I don't know what's going on, but over here in the common room, I didn't use those. Now these are a warm light. I'm going to turn the lights back on now. I didn't use a warm light in there, but it is kind of an amber tone, and what it does is it does give a little bit of a look that's different. I think the look that I get with the amber colored light, like I have over here, is a little bit more homey, a little bit more, I don't know, secure, comfortable, if you will. And I wanted that because that is where Captain Livens, that's where he's doing his primary work. Over here, these are common areas. Those common areas are really meant to be something that, you know, a lot of people are going through. It needs to be fairly well lit. You know, they need to be able to work in there and perform their jobs. So I've got different lighting in there. When I come over here to where they're digging the tunnel, I have little tiny candles. Now, I made these candles, and I mentioned that earlier. John Robeck came up with that idea, and he was thinking of maybe using a toothpick. I think that's one of the things that we talked about. I think he did some other things later. But what I used is some 1.25 millimeter tube. This is brass tubing. It's super thin, super small. And I'm going to show you how to build the little candle that I did. And this is the key to it. The other stuff is really, really simple. But by understanding how to just use this little tubing and maybe how to cut it, that was the number one thing that I thought was, you know, that's something that I could share, and people will you know, need that information. I'll show you how to cut it, because when you cut it, it crimps it, but it's not too bad. And I'll show you how to work with it. So we're going to make a candle. The other thing that I did is inside here in the common room, since we're dealing with tunneling and we're dealing with, you know, moving apparatus and moving machinery underground and stuff like that, I wanted a bunch of ropes. And so what I've got here are some little bundles of rope. Now, I've mentioned this a lot before, and I'm really happy with them. And this is the rope that I use, and it is scale rope, and it is from Siren Ship Model Company. I've given that link in like the description of other ones, other live streams and videos before. I'll put it in there again because I think it's great stuff. The big thing that I always talk about this kind of scale rope is there's no fuzz. Okay, it looks like scale rope. It doesn't look just like twine or string, you know, because I hunted for that stuff for years. No, it looks like rope. You can get it in different thicknesses, different sizes, different colors from Siren Ship Model Company, and I love it. So I'll show you how to make these little bundles, because making these little bundles look like they've been tied by a person that's 1/35th scale, maybe not as easy as it looks. So I made a little jig, and I'm going to show you how to do that. The other thing was I didn't want the same kind of light, so I wanted a little lantern, right? In these different situations, sometimes I want a hanging light. I want a light that is kind of coming down from the ceiling, and I've got that in here. But then the little lantern I wanted for some specific areas. Here on the corner of the tunnel where they're tunneling, they've got candles, because in the movie Beneath Hill 60, they used candles and they had other lighting and stuff. But that was one of the specifics that I got out of that movie, and I really enjoyed that. So I wanted candles. So there are candles around here, but right on the corner, I'm using like a little lantern. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Now, the fun thing about the lantern is I was looking, where am I going to find some little clear tubing that I can use to make a little lantern. I'm thinking like almost like a Coleman lantern or something like that. And I couldn't, I had some stuff, but it's like, it's just not right. And like shrink tube, that's pretty readily available. And I have some clear, but no, it's flexible. Well, guess what? Do you know when you buy your paintbrushes, and specifically the smaller ones, a lot of times it'll have a little clear plastic protective tube right on the end of it. There you go. That's what I used. And I was just so happy that I thought of it, because these little clear plastic tubes are perfect for the application. Now I've got some that are they're not clear. And that would be kind of cool for like a smoked one, but I wanted clear ones. The smoked one might diffuse the light a little bit better. It's not smoked. It's just not clear, right? I don't know what the right word is. It's like semi-opaque. I don't know. But I really wanted to use the clear ones. And so I'm going to show you how to use these. Now, they're not PVC. I don't know what they are, or styrene. So they didn't really work with the styrene glue. So I do have to use super glue on these. But again, I'll show you how to cut them, and I'll show you how to build that little deal. What else was I going to show you? I just think we should just dive into it, because without those pictures, and I don't know why those pictures aren't showing up. I just want to do our live demos. So I'll do that, like the top down. But real quick, I want to say hi to some people. Martin, and I asked him about painting a facade. He said, no, it's a resin facade from Diodump. I think they're referring to AK facades. Yeah, that's what I was referring to, but that's very cool. Martin, I can't wait to see that. Martin is a really, really great modeler, and he posts his great stuff online, and I see it on Facebook. So if you haven't looked at Martin's stuff, take a look at it. And he's got, like a new backdrop for taking better pictures. So that's awesome. Scott Roberts, hey, hi, Bill, good to see the progress. All the very best to you, Scott in Somerset, UK. Thank you very much, Scott. I really appreciate you coming on today. I hope you enjoy it, and please ask questions. Boy, I got a lot of stuff to say, and I don't have any pictures to support it. So I would, love to answer any questions. John says, I have a collection of those paintbrush tubes. I know that would be useful for me in the future. And isn't that the truth? I think is when you start doing scale stuff, you see things with a scale eye, right? You start imagining things that you see that you're like, I throw that away, or whatever. Everything now is kind of like, wait a minute, could I use that in a certain application or something like that? It's nice if you have a place to store that stuff. I do, fortunately, and thank goodness. But if you don't, these aren't too bad. We go through these. And so, I'm sure somebody has maybe one of these around, but they're brilliant. So really, really happy. And I'm glad you have some too, John. Scott, I'm finally here. Howdy from Texas, everyone. Hey, Scott. I hope it's continuing to cool off. Earlier this week, you were saying, well, it's kind of cooling off, but it was still pretty darn warm down there. So I hope it's getting a little bit better. We've been having some rain up here, and I hear it's going to be a cool weather in the Pacific Northwest. So it's going to be a good winter. Hey, First Last is here. Things like those tubes to diffuser lights to other types of containers are a must to hold on to. They can be so useful later for details. You're absolutely correct, First Last. I'm telling you, I'm a pack rat by nature, because as a woodworker, for many, many years, the big issue was like scraps of wood. When do you have enough scraps of wood? When do you get rid of those? Man, I got buckets of scraps of wood, because I'm thinking, hey, I can use that for something. But there's a lot of materials that you go through daily. Lids. I have a little collection of lids over there that I use for like paint and stuff like that. So every lid that comes through the house, I get. Don't do what I've done. It's probably not going to help your partner's stress levels, but I have bought things for the container. So I'm just saying, I'm bad on that one. But it wasn't too bad. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to the top-down camera, and I think we'll start. Well, one of the other things I wanted to show you was this little canary cage. So I'm going to show you the canary cage, and I'll show you how I built that too, because there's a couple of kind of cool things there too. So we're going to do the top down. The top down is here. I'm thinking, is that top down? That's top down. See, I don't even know. I've got a little canary cage and it's inside here, and I want to pull that out because it's not very difficult to build, and I think everybody can do it. See that? That's a very, very small canary cage. Let's see if I can zoom in a little better. And that's it for the zoom. But that little canary cage is just made out of styrene. It's not really difficult to build. But there's one thing that I really wanted to make sure, and that was these are little pieces of copper wire. I think these were copper. And here's the wire. So when I was trying to cut those, I want to get them all the exact same length. And so this is a little trick for cutting dowels, but it's the same thing for cutting little pieces of wire. And so what I did was I just drilled a little hole in the wood. It doesn't go all the way through. It goes to a specific depth. And then I use my I think we used to call them flat, not flat, but like shear cutters, whatever. They cut off very flat and fine. I put it right in the middle of that hole and I clip it. And okay, yeah, not a big deal, but it's all about the repeatability of it. By doing that and always making sure, you know, that I have these flat there when I go to cut. So I make sure that I'm flat every time I cut. Then I can go through here and I can get the same thing every single time. Now that's, that works for styrene, that works for everything that'll fit in the hole and that you can cut flush cutter is what I was trying to think of before. Words, people. But that's just one of the little tricks that I do to get very even little bars for making the canary cage. Now you can't hardly see the canary in there, but I just carved a little canary and painted them yellow, and you get real close up. I had a really tight shot of it, but obviously we can't see that. Okay, so that's that. The next thing I would like to show you is this. This is for the little ropes. So I only have like this much of this rope left because this is pretty thin. This one's a little bit thicker, so I'm not going to use that. But this is another little tool that I like to use, and it's like for mending nets. And I just made it. But this is not like a classic one because the classic one, they come a lot tighter here. But it's just a nice way to hold your line. And so when I am working down here, I just pull some of this out, and this is just a piece of galvanized 40 gauge wire that you can get anywhere. And I like to use the galvanized because it's a little stiffer than, let's say, brass wire of the same thickness. And so this is the galvanized. So what I'll do is I'll take the rope and I will hold it down here, and I've got myself about 2 inches that I'm holding free there, and then I'll wrap it around, and I just did 8 times. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. See, I messed it up there. There's 8. And then before I cut this, I'm going to take some of my super glue, and I am going to use the super thin super glue and just do a little dot, and it's going to bleed into that, and it's going to, go on either side. If you pull it, it kind of gets it to the surface, makes it a real nice connection, or it makes it a real nice, so it soaks in. And then I'm going to clip it right there. There's a little waste, but it's not too bad. So now both of my ends of my string and the string that I left are going to stay right where they are. They're not going to, get all wonky. So the next thing is I'm going to take this over the top, and am I as close as I can get? I'm sorry, folks. That's as close as I can get. I'm going to take this over the top, come inside, and I like to use a little stylus a lot of times. Take that around the bottom, and then I'm going to loop it through the original. Here I'll probably use my tweezers. And when I loop it through the original, that gives me a little bite, around this. I also like to have it a little high. This one, if you notice, it's a little bit high up, and mountaineer guys, I've always noticed when they're tying off stuff, they have the tie a little bit closer to one end. So here, same thing, and I've done that on all of mine. Once you've got that loop, I'm going to come around in the opposite direction just one more time. Okay. See that? And then I'm going to bring this one up, and I'm kind of holding this with my fingers, and it's real wonky. And I'm just going to do a surgeon's knot. Now, a surgeon's knot is where I go through one time and then one more time. It's like the same half hitch, but you're just going through two times. And then I'm going to tighten that down. Now, you can leave those loose if you want to, or I like to do just another little drip of the super fine. Okay, it's locked in just as soon as you do it. I'm going to get these, they cut better. I'm going to clip that, and I'm going to clip that. Now you can see it's like, well, how the heck you get it off there? Well, it's easy. You just kind of work them both to that side, then you work them around, flip it over, and it comes right off. So there you've got a very nicely tied little bundle of rope, and it's consistent. You know, it's that whole repeatability thing, right? I was saying with the wire, when you're doing something multiple times, and I almost posted something on my little community tab this week about, because I think I've talked about it before. When you're doing something where you have to do multiples, is the first one you do like the best? I think mine are. Like when I'm doing like 5 something, it just always seems to me like the first one I do is the best. And I don't know if it's because I'm so totally focused on something, or if I'm just going faster on the other ones. I don't know, but it just always seems like that. So to kind of work with that, I try to build things in groups. So I'll do 4 things at once instead of do one test. If I have to do 4, I'll build them all at once. That's one thing that helps combat that, right? And then the second thing that I do is building the jigs. Building a jig, building something that can stabilize, really, really helps a lot. That then allows me to get that repeatability and make sure things are going to fit. You know, I want all these to look similar because the same people doing it. There's sometimes I don't want things to look similar, certainly, but this is one of ones I certainly want it to be the same. So anyway, I hope you like that. That was something that I really liked. And these little bundles, I'm going to have throughout the tunnel system because this is the stuff that they're going to use in there. Okay. So now I am going to move over here to, and I'm just kind of pushing stuff out of the way here. It's total mess on the desk here. These are the lights that I used this week. I only used these small lights, and lots of times I've done like a light fixture or something like that where it's like it's like a component, right? And then I'll use like a 3mm LED or even a 5mm LED. And, you know, they're the big wonky ones you've seen. Well, these are 1mm and 0.1mm. So these are the 1mm that I did for like the hallways and the rooms and things like that. But these are the ones that John Robeck, and he's on the call today, John Robeck told me about. I didn't even know they had them. I just stopped looking because these were so cool. Well, he told me about these. I immediately went out and got them, and they work fantastic. They're 0.1mm. They're super small. They're about, I mean, you know, people say, oh, it's the size of a head of a pin. Well, these are actually the size of a head of a pin. And they're really nice to work with. The wires are super fine, so you got to be really careful with them, but they work great. And so the first thing I'm going to show you how to do is build a candle, because I think the candles are the first. No, I think I built a little lantern, which I'm going to show you how to do too. But I think I built the lantern first, but the candle I built second. So we're going to do that first. So this is the 1.25mm tubing. And where I got this is at some at some hobby stores, they'll have like a little metal section. They also have it at like a hardware store or something like that. Well, or online, KW metals. Well, 1.25 millimeter brass, I would say thin wall tubing is what this is. And the biggest issue, and I want to make sure I'm getting everybody's questions. Eric says, what was your process to determine the width diameter of the loops for the rope? That was a guess. That's a really good question, Eric. It was just a guess. I was trying to figure out, and that was one of the things that made this really nice. Okay, I think I've got everybody's stuff. So one of the things is nice about this is just by setting that next to my 1/35 figure. I don't even think I have one here, but yeah, I don't want to pull him out of there. But I just thought about, okay, when I'm rolling up like electrical cords is what I typically do, like extension cord, big heavy extension cord. But if I am doing a rope, how big is it going to be? As I'm holding it. So I literally just held this up to my 1/35 character and said, I want the bundle to be about like that. You can make this any size, obviously, and I'm going to show it in the top down again, because the thing I want to make sure you see is there is a little hook at the top. That little hook at the top is really important, because if you don't have that little hook at the top, the thing can slide off and it just makes it a mess. And the other thing about using galvanized wire, I just want to show you here, it's just stronger. I'm pushing down on it here to kind of demonstrate that. I don't know if that's working at all, but it's a little bit stronger. So, because what you don't want is, you don't want this as you're wrapping the rope around it, you don't want this to kind of deflect in, because then if you try to slide it off, it just makes it really difficult. So yeah, this is like galvanized wire. It comes in a spool. It's pretty easy to get a hold of. And it works just great. And you can make one yourself, any size. That's going to be the length pretty much of your bundle. So that's how I figured it out. So great question, Eric. Thank you very much. And I got to pay a lot more attention. Eric says, or was it more of a looks thing instead of a precision process? Does that make sense? Absolutely, Eric. Yeah. And I think we covered that. But yeah, you're absolutely correct. It does. It is more of a look. I like to do that. I think that, because I have my scale. If you don't have a scale, this is very, very important if you're going to do this kind of work. And that is a 1/35 scale. So in 1/35, a foot is about that long, according to this scale. And so that's really good. But sometimes I think personally, like Eric's talking about here, utilizing a comparison of either your figures or your model or the diorama is going to be more. I think your eye is quite accurate at determining if something's too big or too small. Very accurate. We talk about the fault in human senses, whatever. That's very accurate. So when you're building a diorama, and this is something that people told me when I was kind of getting back into it again, build for the eye. If you build to be perfect, sometimes the perfection in something doesn't look quite right. And we've discussed that before. It's something that can happen. Your eye can play tricks on you, because you've all seen things that you know what it is, but until it moves or until you get a different perspective, you can't tell what it is. Well, the same thing can happen in modeling. So build for your eye, look at it, and make sure it's the right size. It can be a little difficult if you're not used to doing that, but once you get used to doing it, I think that it's very helpful. I really enjoy it, and that's really what I try to do as I'm building. I'm trying to build for the eye, because that's how you're interpreting what I build. So yeah, that's what I did. Thanks, Eric. Very, very good question, sir. Martin says, are those tiny ones SMD 0402 LEDs? I can't confirm that. I will have to look up, Martin, and I'm just horrible at this. I should do these things ahead of time. But I will look that up for you, sir, and put it in the description, because that is really nice to know. But they are 0.1 millimeter, not the 1 millimeter. Okay. And I'll look it up afterwards and get that for you. Sleazen is here. Hello. Hi, Bill. How are you and Oscar are doing today? Well, we're doing great. But as I told everybody a little bit earlier, I'm not sure if you were here, it was just a crazy morning because I just getting ready, and my slides aren't working. I don't know why that is. I got to figure that out. So, that's just how it is. But we're ready to go back into the next demo, and I'm going to show you how to make a candle out of 1.25 millimeter brass tubing. So, down camera. Sorry, I just messed that all up. There we go. So the only thing that's difficult in this is the fact that when you cut this stuff, there's no great way to cut it. It's so thin. I mean, it's stiff enough. It's thin wall, but it's stiff enough that it'll hold up, but it can be bent. But when you go to cut it, see that end is, well, you can't see hardly for nothing, but that end is open. But when I cut this, it's going to crush it. Well, I thought that was just horrible. It's like, oh no, what am I going to do? Well, it's not that big a deal at all. What I just do is I come here and man, you can't see nothing. I'm sorry, but basically it's just flat. So what I'm doing is it's flat and it's going this way. I'm going to turn it this way. So now the flat's going this way, and then I'm going to come in here and just very carefully, I'm just going to open it back up. Okay. I'm not trying to crush it the other way. I'm just trying to open it back up. And then I use my small pointed probe and I put it in there and then I spin. I don't want to like hammer it or anything like that because you can split this tubing, but I'm just going to spin. The friction of you spinning in there and holding it with your hand, it's going to make it warm and it'll conform to the roundness of the probe. And so there you go. So now I've got two round ends. So the neat part is that's the candle. So now this is the other thing that I use quite a bit, and it's this. This is a leather hole punch, and they're pretty common. Lots of people, probably a lot of people on the call today have these. If you don't, I would recommend getting it. It's so useful because this will punch through leather, but it also punches really well through styrene. And so that's what I use. Now I've got a question down here and I want to get some stuff read off. John says, I first tried drilling out a toothpick for my candle, which was really too large and difficult to drill into. So I then used clear shrink tubing, which worked well and could even be blunted on the end. That's very cool, John. I like that. Yeah. And then your next comment was, I found I needed to sand the wire on those 1 millimeter LEDs to get rid of the invisible coating varnish they have. Oh, really? I know what you mean. So we're going to talk about that too. So let me finish with this, and then once I get there, I'll address that, John, because that's a really good point. Pardon me. So this punch I use, and it's got, multiple sizes in here that we can use. And then when I do it, heck, I keep them all, because when you're punching this stuff, it will force it up through this, and because it's so thin, I'm not doing it for the hole. I'm doing it for the cut out, and so you have to kind of force them up. So you have to do a bunch at one time. So I have some in here, and I'm going to grab the ones that I use for the candle. And so what I did was, excuse me, I'm using, this is the largest size that it'll cut, and this is from some relatively thick styrene. I'd say that's a 32nd of an inch thick. Here's some thinner styrene, and then this is just a very, very small piece of styrene tubing. And I know you can't see that, I'm sorry, but I'm going to put that on there, and so I just glue those together, and then that tubing that's glued on there, this guy fits right into. And before I put it there, what I do is I glue these together, I let them set. And then I'll come back in here. Sorry, John, I'm going to get your question off the screen there. And then I just drill these out with a twist drill and just a hole that's big enough to get my very, very fine wires through. Now, when I'm drilling these things and I'm, trying to get this wire through, in the candle, I wanted to have the wire come not out of the bottom but out of the side, and I couldn't do that. So what I did was I took a little file here and I made a channel, and so there's a hole in the middle of this dot, and I know you can't quite see it, but there's a hole in the middle of that dot, and I just made a channel on to the outside so that my wire will go through the hole and then out the channel. So now we're going to take, I've got all my parts. I'm going to take one of these. And the great thing is I can just pull this out of here. They're in a bundle. And I try to keep them in the bundle because, man, the wire is so thin that if you get them all taken apart, it's just going to make a mess. Keep them all together. Be very careful with them. And then just do one of these little tucks in through there. And that's going to keep them from going bonkers on you. So now this is small enough that I can work my wires through the tubing. You can also sand the end of this very small tubing to kind of get it flatter or more kind of flush on the end. I don't think it's necessary though. And then you just feed that in there, and then they just go through the little tube and the little base, and basically there's your candle. It's not that hard of a process. The fact is, the real things that I learned on this, because that's kind of how I gauge this stuff, is how to cut this and not be afraid to lose it, or if you have that crushed end. One of the ideas, if you have that crushed end, is to just you just sand it back past the crushed end. Well, that's all fine and well, but you're using a lot of your material up that way. Just by crimping it and reopening it and using that little stylus, it worked great. Now, I had pictures, of these candles, because then I just painted them white. I painted the base kind of gold. I wanted brass, like a brass fitting. I don't know if that's going to stay. That's what's in the diorama now. So I might go back and just paint them. They're in position, but I can still go back and paint them, So that was the first one. The second one, or the second demonstration, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to move my cameras around so I can get a much tighter shot, because I think that I can. It's just going to be, it's going to be kind of a little disruptive. But I think you'll get to see a lot better of the demo, because this next demo, we're going to do a lantern. And the lantern is basically the same process, but we're using those very thin tubes from the paintbrushes. And I'm also going to use this, and you don't have to use this, but I'm going to use this. And this is a very small tool for marking. It's a marking gauge. Now, this is a miniature marking gauge, but it's a brilliant tool for cutting very small tubing. And so I think you'll like it. So I'm going to kind of do some wonkiness here with my cameras and try to get something so you can see what the heck I'm doing. So if you'll give me a second, I'll get that done. And I will do that. So what I'm doing is I'm taking my primary camera and I'm swinging it around, and I'm going to use my primary camera, which zooms in really nicely, by the way. It's going to zoom in to the stuff on the countertop, or on my desktop here, and we'll see how that looks. How's that look? Now, this, I can really zoom in. You're not going to be looking at me no more, but this might be more interesting than that anyway. So here is that very, very small tubing. So this is the tubing that you're going to get. Trying to get in the camera here. You're going to get from the end of your paintbrushes, right? It comes right off the end of your paintbrush. Now, this little device is, like I said, it's a marking gauge. Now, this is a dual marking gauge, and what it's for is, I'm going to try to get the light on it better. What it's for, and let's get real tight. How's that? What this is for is you bring one of these out and you can lock it down. You can do them one at a time or two. And that has a little blade. See that little blade on the end of it? That little blade will cut a little mark in your wood. So when you're woodworking, what you do is you put this on your piece of wood like this and you draw it down, and you see that little mark it's leaving? That is for cutting dovetails. Well, it's a $30 tool, so that's not a too expensive tool, and you get two of them actually. Not the other one only has a single one of these. But back to my little narrative here. When you bring them both out at the same time, at the same distance, then I need to go further. Sorry. Then you can cut tubing. So this is what I have now. By having both of them out, and there's two blades on there. Remember, they're very, very small, very flat blades. Now I can take this and set it right there. I hold down and I just twist. Now, the neat thing about this is I think everybody has, and look, it just twists off, and look, it just cut that beautifully. So there is a very, very thin or a very, very small piece of tube cut. Now, the thing that I've been talking about, and I've probably said it 15 times, is repeatability. I'm trying to get this in focus. Repeatability. This allows me to get the same. Well, I screwed that one up because sorry about my language, because it was cracking. Where's my other one? I have another one here, and I'll do another one for you. Maybe not. Yes, no, indifferent. I can't find it. So sorry. Well, oh, here we go. Sorry about that. So here's another one. It was just, I didn't have enough here, and this is a little bit cracked, and so it didn't want to work. But let's do this one and it'll work. And just by twisting and holding it there, cuts it real nice, real clean, and you know, the exact same. So that's the first part. Then I'm going to go back to our little tray here, and these are all the little guys. And so I want to get something that is going to fit this. This is going to be my base, and I have a large circle there. That large circle is the largest one of these that can be punched. So next, I'm going to reset this to a little bit shorter, because here I just want a very short piece of this larger tubing. And the beautiful part about this is this larger tubing is got an internal diameter just perfect for these little guys. So we're going to do the same thing. I'm just going to hold this here. I'm going to put that there. I'm kind of pushing down with my thumb. And then if I just twist, this is thicker tubing, so you got to twist more. Then it cuts, and see, it's completely around there. And then I think I got to cut this one off because it's just so thick. But now it's completely the same. So we'll get another one here. There we go. And I'll cut it off. It's easier that way. There we go. So now I just take this guy, stack that on there like so. Get this better in the camera. Just like that. Where's my tweezers? And I'm going to just use my super thin Tamiya in there. And that's going to, you know, through capillary action, just get that in there. And I'm going to put this in here just to show you what it's going to look like. It's not going to really glue in there because the super glue doesn't really work. Or I'm sorry, the Tamiya glue doesn't really work on the, now it's stuck to my finger, on the clear plastic, but I just want you to see what it's going to look like. Okay, so just like I did before with the, there we go. Just like I did before with the little tubing, and I'm looking for it here, for our candle, so that now you can see a little bit better. For a candle, I'm just going to start stacking things to get, you know, what I need to finish this off. So right on top, I need this size. It's a little bit smaller. And then on top of that, I need that size. And what I want to do is I just want this to look like, like the Coleman little camping lanterns you've seen or something like that. I don't want it to look exactly like that because I don't believe they had those in the trench, but they did have these very small lanterns that were used in the trenches. I'm going to just super glue this on right now. And that's the wrong super glue to try because that'll make a huge mess. But I will grab this and just a little tiny bit. I don't want to fog it. It will fog it if you get too much on there. So, be super careful. But now I can add the top there. Now, these lights, so that's what that's going to look like. And that's just your little lantern. These lights are so small that I can just drill, up through the bottom and put these through. I don't have to go through the top or anything like that. I can just put that up through. And that's what I did. I made 5 of these in total. And I did different things with each of them. There's one on the corner, I think I tried to show earlier in the diorama. And then there's 4 more that I put next to the Livens large gallery flame projector. And that, I painted those red. I wanted, obviously, no candles in there because that would be silly. But I didn't want to have just like the same thing. I wanted some kind of designation that this, is like fuel and things like that. So now I'm going to try to get this camera back on me so I can talk to you. And, if you were coming here today thinking this is like a full-on pro, live stream, then well, here's the reality of it. But there you go. So I think that was, one of the things I enjoyed so much was building the different lights, building them to kind of meet the different areas that I had to put stuff. And I did see a very definable difference in the different kind of lighting I was able to get in the different rooms for their purposes. Down here in the bottom of the diorama, that's like the testing lab. That's where, the Livens large gallery flame projector is being tested and gone through and kind of built up and modified and stuff like that. I messed up and I got like a really bright light because when you're doing your LEDs, of course, you've got the kind of the different spectrums, like the tungsten white bright, it's almost blue light. That's at the far, one end of the spectrum. And then the other ones are like the amber ones that I showed you earlier today in here. These are like an amber color. And so they're much different. It's like a warm light and it has a yellow kind of a, I don't know what's beaming out of it. It gives you a nice color. It's just very warm and stuff. By trying to find the right one for what you're trying to do, or the message you're trying to give, even going to colored lights, because I've done that too, where I have a colored light, you can really kind of start influencing the emotion or enhance whatever you're trying to do in the diorama with your lighting. So that's one of the things that I really like doing about this. It's fun. You build all these things, and I've been building these things now for months, these little rooms and all the stuff in them. And when you get that lighting in there, it really does, it comes to life. It starts to really show the shadows. You start to see what you imagine because it does not look like it does on the bench. You're lighting the incandescent lights and stuff like that. It doesn't look like that. This room, I can't simulate without those lights that are in it. I don't have a way to do that. Even with my little test probe thing, I showed you how to build where you can test where your lights are going to go. There's not enough light flooding the area to really give you a good idea. So when you get to this part on your diorama, you get to this part of putting this stuff in, it's super exciting because you're seeing and you're realizing, it's one of those, I guess, those waypoints along the way of getting to the final completion of your diorama. That's so exciting because it's fun to get something done and then move on to the next. Well, this one, there's such a visceral reaction that you can receive because you get to see all the work that you've done in its proper lighting. And if it's not what you like, these aren't too hard to change out. So one of the things I didn't talk about today really was the electrical, the supply, what's lighting all of this. And so let me turn this around a little bit for you. Each of these has been, I kind of look at them as components. Remember the whole modular idea that I've promoted before? The whole diorama still comes apart. Okay, so it's very modular, so I can get an access to things. But each of these rooms is also kind of modular. So that's one module or component. Think about like a subassembly or a component. That's one component, that's one component, and that's one component. So each of these components is lit with the lighting, okay, and it comes to one central point. So on the back here, I've got all these different components. That's a component, that's a component, that's a component, and that's a component. All those 4 different components are coming together and are connected to my benchtop power supply. And so my benchtop power supply, you can't quite see it. I can kind of make that happen. There you go. That's my benchtop power supply, and that's really wonky. Hello. But this allows me to do this. That is not something that I can do in the long term. This is like the test bed. This is like, what I'm doing now, just to get everything going. I still have to figure out all the other electrical stuff. So, and other stuff, electrical stuff, I mean, is driving it from a singular power supply, driving it from 9 volts. If I'm going to have an Arduino, all of these things still have to be calculated into this because I can still do a lot with these lights. The lights are in and working right now, and I can see the environment, but I'm not done with the electrical at all. In the last big diorama that I did, Wolfenstein, which is behind me, by the way, I brought it out just because of this. I had 3, if not 4, different rounds of doing lighting. I've reduced that here because I was able to kind of, in the modular way of doing this component, get that done, this component, get that done. But I still am going to have to come back and do the kind of the engineering behind it, the electrical engineering part of it, which I'm not, but meaning I have to figure out what resistors are going to have to be for each and every light, how much power it's going to need. Right now, I'm drawing 70 milliamps, which is about, it's like, if you think of 1 amp as being 100, 70, that's it. It's 70% of 1 amp. So I am going to have at minimum a 1 amp power supply to drive this. And that's one of the things that's really cool about this. It shows me using this benchtop power supply. It shows me down the road, okay, I have to start thinking about a 1 amp power supply. 70% of what your power supply is something that's like, okay, maybe I want a 1.5 amp power supply just so I have a bigger buffer, right? So all of that stuff has to still be done. All of that stuff has to still be figured. And frankly, I've got some lights I want to add. I'm not quite done with lights. There's a couple of places in here that I don't think are done. They're not bright enough. There's a way to look at it with the lights out like I did earlier, and it looked pretty bright, but I need this thing to be recognizable and properly lit to show the things I want to show, but also lit for a lit room like it is now. And you can definitely tell, it's lit. So that's larger amounts of light. When I can turn the lights out, they can have lower amounts of light. So will I switch that? I don't know. I can use an Arduino and kind of figure that out. So this is the point where I can see what it's going to look like, and it's super exciting. And it also allows me to kind of gather data of what I'm going to have to do in the future. But I know I'm going to have to get back in to do another round of electrical for the lighting, if not add more lighting and then another round. So I just want to make sure that you understand it. I'm not done with the lighting, and it's not something that, you know, you get there and it's like, oh, great, that's done. Now I can just completely move on. No, it's something I'm going to have to probably revisit as I build the diorama. And if you do something complicated like this, I think you would as well. Though I have great faith, and a lot of you out there are a lot smarter at planning than I am. So you probably figure out a better way to do it. And if you do, tell me about it, because I love that. You know, I think that's great. I'm a big person of best idea wins. So if you guys have ideas, please throw them this way. So let's look at a couple of comments, because I've just been rambling on here now forever. So I did want to talk about this. John made this comment a little earlier, and I said I'd come back to it. And the issue is this. On these LEDs that you get, there's a couple of things that you need to know about them. Number one, there's cathode and anode, and I don't know which one means what, but I do know that the longer lead off of this is your positive lead, and I think that's the anode. But please look that up. I have like one of the most sketchiest brains there is so far as remembering facts. I get it visually, but remembering facts, I'm just not great. And anybody that's seen my my live streams knows this. But I'm pretty good at figuring stuff out. So the longer one is your positive. The other thing is the wire is insulated, but it's super thin insulation. It's like a coating. It's like a liquid coating it's dipped in to give you this clear coating over the wire. To solder that stuff, you've got to scrape it away. And that's exactly what John's saying here. You can scrape it away. You can sand it away. You got to be careful, because these things are so thin, you can go through them real quick. So sanding with a super fine brush or not brush, but like sanding stick works great. Just the end. Don't go doing the whole length of wire. You know, that's something that I would do. That's why I mention it. You know, I don't think any of you would do it, but it's something I would do, kind of dumb. Because I always find opportunities for dumb. So yeah, just be really careful about that, and then it'll solder. The other thing about really thin wire is if your soldering iron is too hot, you can burn through wire quick. It doesn't take too much to burn through wire. So be careful. This stuff is that thin. You got to be really careful about it. Okay. John says this is where dioramas overlap with cinematography on the Venn diagram. I don't know what the Venn diagram is, but I got to know about that, John. See, you've got all this knowledge. John works in the movie industry, so that's really, really fun. We talk about some of that stuff. Do you plan on lighting the top level of the diorama? Yes. Not skylighting. I don't think I'll do. I haven't ever done that, but I have thought about, remember, strobes and stuff, and having flashes, you know, like bombs going off. I love that idea. But I haven't thought about the sky, and I could do like uplighting on a backdrop, and I've never done a backdrop really either, but like, you know, something reflecting off something. Boy, that would be kind of cool. And yes, longer is always positive. There you go. So thanks very much, John. I appreciate that. I need some water. And though it looks like maybe it's scotch, it's actually tea. I'm not a big tea drinker, but it's great for like when I'm doing my live stream. So, you know, and I don't get so ampy because of caffeine, because I used to drink caffeine till 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Probably not a great idea. I think that's about it, guys. Guys, gals, whomever's here. I've really enjoyed it. I don't know what the heck happened with my computer this morning. It's a brand new computer, and it's fine. It's just I gotta check this and do that, and all that kind of stuff. And so I'll get that done for next time. So thank you very much for coming by. I would love to answer any questions that you still have. Get them in there quick, and I'll dive right in. And then think about sending me questions as well. I'll do a replay of this. It'll post at about 4 o'clock this afternoon. It takes a little bit of time for it to process and do all its jazz. But I'll get that up. So if you're watching the replay, yeah, I love your comments, and I always answer every comment, question, whatever. You know, a lot of times I will also do something live, or I've even made a video on a specific request because I think, hey, that's really a great idea, and that's really something I want to look at. And so, you know, if you have a question or something like that, say it, ask it, put it in the comments, all that kind of stuff. And John says, well, of course we know it's Scotch. And yeah, it could be. You never know. And then John says, third week, all patrons tonight. So here's the wackiness thing. I thought this was the third week. So last Friday, I had all patrons. And Josh showed up and we had a nice deal. But last weekend was third Friday. So I'm going to open up to all patrons because all my patrons get to come on and we do a live. And in that live instance, it's not just me yammering on. Everybody's on and we can talk and we can converse and stuff like that. So if you haven't seen my Patreon, go check that out, please. It's really fun. And to get in that, you know, once a month where we do the Friday night live, which is from 6 to 9 p.m. Pacific time. It's a little late for some folks, but heck, it's early for some folks, maybe in Europe. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So take a look at that. And like I say, once a month, it's everybody. But we do it every Friday for my top patrons, like John.